guys, my name is Mari and I am back with another episode, and this episode is going to be a new generation versus old generation, where we kind of combine two different visions of Habesha culture and American culture. So I am here with Dr. Kimfe, and he's a counselor, professor, and a sociologist. And then I'm here with my cousin Jasper, aka Jazz, and I think you guys are two wonderful people to interview and kind of talk about both visions of the Habesha culture and the American culture. So starting off, the question that I really want to ask, and this actually means a lot to me, is the youth, like, we're big believers on believing one's passion or believing in our dreams. But with parents or like the older generation, it's very important to include school. Like, school is always first. So why do you think that is, and why is school so superior and more bigger than our dreams?
Okay, I think to answer this question, we have to define what culture is.
Mm-hmm.
So, according to sociologists, culture is everything we have, do, and think as a member of a society. Mm-hmm. So, culture has two aspects. It has a material aspect and a non-material aspect, which is also known as substance. Right. So we're not dealing with the material aspects, which is our tools and instruments, but we're going to deal, since the question is entirely subjective, so we're going to deal with substance. Right. What is our non-material cultures? So in sociology, non-material cultures are morals and values. Mm-hmm. It includes our musics and morals, and these things have also sanctions on it. It has a positive and negative sanctions on it. Mm-hmm. So most of us are ethnocentric people. That is, we see things in accordance to our culture. Mm-hmm. We even judge others according to our culture. So when you come up with your question, what was that?
Following one's passion.
Following one's passion, it's a kind of a cultural shock. Right. Because it's radical. Mm-hmm. And why? Because in our culture, for a young person to be a complete person, has to go through elementary, secondary, and college, and come up with a degree. Mm-hmm. So when you say, I want to follow my passion, that means you're deviating from this culture. Mm-hmm. So you're not within the framework we understand. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult for your parents to comprehend that. It's not only that, because our culture is a homogeneous society. Mm-hmm. So we look at each other, not only within the family, but outside the family, our neighbors. Mm-hmm. So we can't say yes to this kind of question, because the other family and the other our neighbors are going to watch this, and oh man, she stopped her school. We don't want anybody here to talk to this girl. Don't even associate with her. Right. You see? So your parents are aware of that, mm-hmm. and they don't want to be ostracized. So they want to make sure, and they're not comfortable with that too. Because probably your passion would be dancing, right, or music, or something else outside of school. So they're not comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. They don't think you will have a life, mm-hmm. Following a passion instead of a regular school. Right. So that's why they panic. It's not acceptable. Right. It's not in our value. It's not in our culture.
Yeah. And do you think that's right, or do you think that's wrong?
Well, you know what happens is, even though we're in America, and some parents do not adopt or assimilate the American culture. Mm-hmm. They're there in the house, and I told you, it's a homogeneous society. It's just we're Ethiopian with Ethiopian communication, everything. They don't go out to learn the culture. Right. And also there is a denial. The denial is when you go to school, they don't realize that every class changes your behavior, mm-hmm. and your attitude and your perspectives. Mm-hmm. You see, for them, you're just a kid. and they have to lead you. Yeah, when I was young, I wanted to be. I had a passion too. I wanted to be a priest. You know. And even though my life then was power, and in fact contrary to what a priesthood is, but still, I don't know how I got that. I wanted to be a priest. My parents are educated. My grandparents are educated. They're surgeons. They're medical doctors. They were in England for many years. I mean, they came up growing up, an old person in Ethiopia, but they still, since the culture is so strong, it has never been fettered by European power. We've never been colonized. So our culture is from from time immemorial. It is so strong. Even with all that education, I just couldn't bring that passion there. One of my cousins, who who advised me to bring it up in a family gathering, when I was about to talk about it, he just walked up. And I followed him. I said, "Where are you running?" He said, "No, I don't want to see you hang upside down. You know, they're going to crucify you. You better come." So that's it. It's so strong. You have to go through the normal and the regular procedure to become a complete person and be successful for us.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's not really, as far as I'm concerned, it's wrong. You know, it is wrong.
Yeah. So you're going to talk about, you're like talking for the youth. So I'm going to ask you this question that youth tends to do things like tattoos, piercings, dreads, like things that African parents think or consider like bizarre. So how would you explain to the parents the reasoning of why the younger generation do these specific things to express themselves?
So with that, the first thing is tattoos, piercings, and all those things that people consider bizarre have actually been around for millennia. People have done it throughout the generations. But there's always something when a new generation comes that the older generation looks at the new generation and finds bizarre. It can be, you know, Generation X and like before then. Every new generation does something bizarre. And that they just do something to express themselves and express their individuality. You know, can look at throughout the generations, you're coming from cultures that were more around family and thus individuality. But now with the, you know, onslaught of like social media and things like that, everyone wants to be unique in their own person and they want to express themselves differently, you know. And so with that, you have things that we do that our parents, Ethiopian parents, coming from, again, a conservative culture, find bizarre. So I just think like you can go with this in different ways because you have Ethiopian kids that are born here that have parents that grew up in Ethiopia that are now being assimilated to this culture where American kids, they might do certain things like tattoos and piercings. And it's funny, sometimes I'll see videos of them like surprising their parents with a tattoo, and their parents, like, you know, they might be surprised with something, but they're not going to kill them. They're not going to like, you know, go crazy or anything like crazy, you know. But then like, I don't think a lot of Ethiopian kids would do that. That video wouldn't be, you know, So, you know, a lot of things that American kids can get away with that Ethiopian kids like can't. And so now they're just trying to kind of break this, I would say, this cultural norm, this limit that they think that Ethiopian culture is like limiting them. And again, it's conservative culture. Conservative culture always, like you said before, like there's like one channel of a way of doing things, you know. But again, I mean, I will even say like in Ethiopian culture, there are things like tattoos that the women have and things like that, you know. And those things, like I said, they've been around for a while. They just change over time, you know. And I just think that the older generation needs to be more accepting of that, you know. Obviously there's, you know, a limit to everything, but like I said, like let them express themselves freely, you know, and then they can lead obviously to more open discussion about why they decided to do things. Because tattoos, for example, sometimes, most of the time, people get them because they have personal meaning to them, something they have gone through, you know. And so I just think that older parents should have more open ear and open mind to these discussions.
The first time I saw my son pierced, you know, he lives in Kansas.
Yeah.
So he came to visit me when I saw kids.
What'd you say?
Embarrassed.
Yeah.
In fact, I thought he even changed his gender.
Wow.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
telling you, I mean, it was terrible.
It was different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this question for you, I feel like the youth really wants to know the answer to this, is like relationship-wise. Why is it that parents are more comfortable or would rather have us be in a relationship with someone that's the same ethnicity, so Ethiopian?
Yeah, what happens is, he doesn't even mention it. Young people have their own social integration, social interaction, and social education.
Yeah.
They are brought up in a totally different area. So they have their own perspectives. So when they come with a person with another ethnic, it's the parents. It's not good for the parents because parents think that it doesn't last. It won't last because of different tradition. It's not only that. For us, marriage is not only a unity of two individuals. It's a unity of the two families. The two families married. See, they're married, and you were just part of that family.
Yeah.
So when you come with a foreigner, a single person, that totally deviates the cultural aspect.
Yeah.
There's no, in fact, they think that if there is some family squabbles, they won't come in between and try to bring peace. One, because lack of language, and second, they don't trace anything to advise you with. There's no similarity in culture. So when you bring together, I mean, the husband and wife fighting, and when you come to bring them together, you have to have a common ground, a cultural ground, so they could lean on it. But in this case, he's or she's from entirely different world.
So it's harder.
And so they're not comfortable. They said it won't last long. And they don't want their daughter or the son come by crying at home at the end of the time. So that's why they're not comfortable.
Yeah.
I know of a family who's married to one of the African countries, guy, and he's well educated. And the parents were not comfortable. There was a wedding, but the parents were not comfortable. They were just sitting there while everybody's dancing. And I'm sure all the parents, other parents with their daughter probably say to the daughter, don't ever think like this, It's not going to happen. You see, this is just, I was shocked too, because they were just sitting there. They're not enjoying.
Yeah.
So it's out of fear of the consequence.
Okay.
Yes.
Your son, Mike,
Yeah.
he's not married to a Habesha.
No, he's not married to Habesha.
How'd you took that though? You took that, was it hard for you or was
No,
it?
it wasn't because probably I was exposed to many cultures.
Okay.
I was going to get married to an Indian too when I was in India.
Yeah.
But my father wrote me a letter saying that if you mix bad blood, don't ever come back home.
Yeah.
I had to stop that.
Yeah.
But when my son introduced me, he didn't even introduce me. He told me that he's in love and he's going to get married. The first question I asked is, "Do you love her?" And he said yes, and he was about to cry,
Wow.
admitting that yes. And I said, "Okay, then you have my blessings. Go ahead."
Okay.
I have 2 kids now.
I would add to that there's also a spiritual aspect to that as well, the religious aspect, because with the conservative cultures, the region's religion ties closely to the culture. And so if you have, let's say, an Orthodox or Christian man marrying, let's say, like a woman of Islam or something like that, then there's clashes, not just culturally, but also spiritually. How do you raise someone with 2 different morals? A kid, like they're going to be confused. And so when you do have clashes, then it's like the argument is even bigger. That common ground is less uncommon. So that's something else to consider, I would say. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back with more questions about mental health and other things. Okay, so the next topic that we're going to be talking about is mental health. And I want to talk about this specific matter because the youth tends to struggle with anxiety, stress, and even depression. But the older generation doesn't really understand that to the point where it's kind of hard for us to open up to our parents or anybody else. So I wanted to ask you, why, like, how does it, do you think it'll affect the youth, like, mentally and emotionally, and if so, why?
Yes, it will. I'm also just come from personal experience when I had, first of all, with conservative cultures, because there's a lack of individuality, everything is, like I said before, like one way of doing things. When you get assimilated to a culture like America, where it's very open, a lot of more accepting, you kind of get, as a kid growing up, bombarded with a lot of things. And with that comes mistakes that you make. And with that, how can you tell your parents certain things that they would find bizarre, or there's a stigma behind a lot of things. And so I have seen some other Ethiopian men, for example, if they have kids out of wedlock, for example, there's some deep other issues with like women as well when they deal with, you know, men in terms of like abuse and certain things like that. Things that, again, it's a stigma around conservative cultures where like you cannot come up and tell your parents because of the embarrassment that it could cause, you know? So, and even things like depression and things that maybe the Ethiopian parents might find like not a big deal, that end up becoming a big deal, because right now with social media, I mean, people, they make decisions based off of, they let people's comments on social media and their profile dictate their emotions for that day or for that time period, you know? And these are the things that Ethiopian parents, older generation, do not know about. And so it's hard to speak on those things. And when they sit on those things, it builds up and then it just blows out of proportion sometime in the future. And so I think it's very important for Ethiopian parents to, again, be open-minded so that they can speak to their kids, so that when they are going through those things, that they're there as a support, not a crutch, you know? And you don't want your kids going somewhere else outside the home to seek help and guidance as well. Because the home is where the love is, you know? And so that's what I would say that.
And Dr. Kempe, why do you think it's so hard for our parents to understand what we're going through, like with situations that we are going through today?
Because they're not aware of what's going on outside. I have this case. I was working on a high school student, 12th grade, and he stopped going to school and started taking drugs. And what happened was, I mean, he just stopped schooling. And he started, here's a mother who was crying every day. And she didn't know why. He didn't want to tell her. And then when I talked to him, and after like probably 5 or 6 sessions I had with him, he just started opening up. And the reason why he stopped classes or taking drugs is because he was a good basketball player, and a little bit also showy, and he has a girlfriend. So when the coach changed, and I think the new coach didn't want to put up with his behavior, so he just get up. You're not playing basketball anymore. And because of that, his girlfriend left him too. So he just can't tell this to his parents. So he chose his own way, and he started taking drugs.
Yeah.
So I was with him for a couple of months, and until he just released from his depression, and he had to go back and graduate. But the reason why young people are not telling what they are exposed outside is because they understand their parents do not comprehend this. For the parents, they send them to school, that's it. As far as they're concerned, they are in the school. whatever, the ups and downs and vicissitudes of life in the school system, they don't understand, they don't know.
Yeah.
So, of course, the only solution for that is opening. They have to discuss everything with their parents. The parents have to be willing and give time to listen to what the kids are going through.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, Jess, do you think that growing up as this, African kid kind of helped you to become this better, like superior or better, stronger person?
So, yeah, yes and no. As an immigrant, and I'm going to group African and all immigrants in the same one coming to America, who are more closely aligned and attached to our culture. We're not better than or superior than the kids here. It's just we approach problems with a different perspective and different mindset. And so the same problem can come up to an American kid and an immigrant kid, let's just say, and you'll view that problem differently and the solution differently. And so the one thing I will say is immigrant parents who push their kids like a lot harder, they have more like grit. And so sometimes those kids in an education field and things like that, they become more successful. Success meaning in what we think is success, because success is different for everyone.
Right.
That can lead that to that passion question,
Right.
And so, you have to be a lawyer, doctor, whatever. It's like that drive, that grit that they have, because of lack of opportunities where they come from. Whereas here, American kids have so many opportunities. So if they drop out of school, their parents are like, oh, it's okay. Pursue your passion, it's all right, more accepting of that, So I think that what we as immigrant kids come to America with is, more of a closer family tie than American kids, because I have plenty of friends that don't even speak to their parents on a normal basis. That kind of helps them, that closeness with their family, deal with certain things. Like a lot of things I dealt with, my parents were there to support me through that, So I just think that yes, in certain ways it does help to be an immigrant parent, but in certain other ways that we talked about, when you're trying to assimilate with this culture, be friends with these American kids and things like that, and then you kind of look at your parents like, well, I can't tell them these things. So it's like a pros and cons to both of that.
Okay.
But no, we're not superior or anything like that. Maybe we have more grit and, to go through these situations.
Yeah. So, Dr. Kempa, what are the solutions to all these problems that we went through so far?
Okay, the first solution is a roundtable discussion with parents. There has to be a roundtable discussion all the time. Kids have to be open to their parents, and parents have to be willing to listen to them. Okay, and there's a cultural lag, what they call a cultural lag in sociology. The parents are Ethiopians and the kids are Americans. There's no bridge in between. So that's all this misunderstanding is because of that. So there has to be a bridge. There has to be equilibrium, a common sense, a common ground for parents and children to discuss and come into the same goal. It has to be like that. And the other one is, the other solution is we have to have parents have to be aware of the fact that they are not doing their best to understand their kids.
Right.
You see? So parents have to study this culture. They have to assimilate and adopt the culture. They have to go out and see where their kids are, who are their friends, and what do they want in their life. So they have to go out and integrate with indigenous people. And they have to be able also to improve their language. You see, it's not a matter of an accent, it's a matter of grammar and the dictions. So they have to be able, because their kids, most of the kids don't speak Amharic.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
And sometimes your parents are angry and they tend to speak Amharic because they can't continue being angry in English. So you listen and listen, at the end of the conversation, say, what are you saying? I don't understand what you're saying. So parents have to be able to study the language and be able to express their feelings as well. Okay, so there'll be a breach in between. So the goal, I mean, the solution is both from parent side and the children. The children has to be patient. They have to be patient, condescending enough to understand. You know, their parents don't be angry or proud of what you are. Just understand them and listen. Okay, and like in the case of bringing another person from another culture, it has to be a gradual process. Don't just boom, this is my husband now. You see? Yeah. Yeah, it has to. He has to be introduced to your parents. You have to know him, understand him. See, that'd be part of the solution.
I would say also to even have time to sit with your kids requires time. Sacrifice. You can't, a lot of parents think that they are successful parents because they provide food on the table for them. And so I see this a lot growing up when the single mom or even both mom and parents, they're out, their kids are playing video games, their kids are watching TV and being exposed to certain things at an early age, because they rather him sit at, in front of a TV than go out somewhere else, And so as that continues, then those kids develop problems that they, again, are too afraid to come to their parents with. And their parents are so busy working, so there's no even time to even sit down and speak. So that I would say the first thing. And the other thing coming from a young person is you're gonna make mistakes growing up. And sometimes what in Amharic, which would be mekmes, to even taste certain things, it doesn't mean you're eating the whole pie, meaning you're not, let's say you experience with drugs, you experience with alcohol, or something like thing. It shouldn't be looked down upon you have to have experiences, you learn from experiences. And so sometimes parents have to be understanding of that. Because their kid has had a drink doesn't mean he's an alcoholic. Or he has tried drugs doesn't mean he's a druggie, you know what I'm saying? Now obviously when those things are consistent and they cause issues in other parts of their life, their education, their school, or whatever it is at work, that's problematic, then the parents should step in. But sometimes I feel like parents should also parent with a little rope, with a little leeway, and give them a little more space to grow into themselves. A lot of the decisions, the mature decisions that I made was honestly when I was living by myself at one point because I had no one over me. And so that being responsible made me more mature. Being more responsible for my decisions, that it will affect me, there's no one to help me. Things like that, when parents are less involved in the process, sometimes also helps for their kids to grow as an individual, make their own decisions, not based off the fear of their parents' judgment, but based on this is what I want because this is what's good for me. And so this is what I would add to that.
Thank you, Jazz, and then thank you, Dr. Kemper, for joining me on this episode. It really means a lot to me. And thank you, viewers, for watching this episode, and I hope you guys learned a little bit of something out of this. So stay safe and see you soon.